So, hi,
Hi,
Andy.
Janelle.
Are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
Okay. What was your circumstances when you were born?
I was a couple weeks late. I probably drove my mother crazy. But no, I grew up in a great home,
Hmm.
and it was a very service oriented home. So actually, going all the way back to my grandparents, all of them were involved in service in some way in their communities. My grandfather was a CEO of a major company down in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
My grandmother on that side was really involved in serving at a local museum down there and contributing to various charitable causes. And then
Hmm.
on my dad's side, my grandma was very involved in the community here in the Sacramento area. I grew up in Sacramento,
Hmm.
and unfortunately, I never met my grandfather on my dad's side, but he was a veteran, and
Hmm.
so throughout, and then that all transferred down to my parents.
Hmm.
We spent a lot of time at various charitable events, nonprofit meetings, things like that. So from a very young age, I was exposed to the idea that it's about more than yourself. It's about public service, and being involved in the community
Hmm.
is a really important thing. um, we weren't regular churchgoers,
Hmm.
but they did definitely teach me about right and wrong.
Sure.
We celebrated, the Christian holidays, Christmas and Easter.
Hmm.
Um, we did, said grace before the meals at those holidays, so I learned a little bit about prayer. So
Hmm.
it's kind of a theme, throughout my life, is that as I've gotten closer to Jesus, a lot of that has come through interactions with people and not necessarily from a formal church setting. I think church
Okay.
is really important, but
Yeah.
really a lot of my turning points were just regular people serving. And
So you had a good sense, not just of serving, but
yeah,
of that your identity is
yes,
tied to community.
yes, absolutely.
And I don't know if you're saying it in that way in retrospect, but also
Hmm.
to family and your family lines and who you,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, my identity definitely was wrapped up a lot in the broader community. But also even just the idea of accomplishment. So once I
Okay.
did, get a little bit older, starting to go to school, even in preschool,
Mhm.
because my parents were so diligent about reading to me and
Mhm.
helping me develop. I would actually take homework home from preschool to do it at home to kind of accelerate my reading skills even further. And this
Mhm.
wasn't something I was like pressured to do. This was something
It was
I
in you.
wanted to do.
Were you a first child?
I was a first child, yes.
And
And
so how many
so so
siblings
I
did
now
you
have
have?
one other brother.
Okay.
He's 7 years younger than me.
Okay.
So for the first 6.5, almost
Mhm.
7 years of my life, I was an only child. So
Mhm.
obviously my parents poured a lot into me.
Yeah.
And so then when I started going to school, I was, I was, reading at a pretty, advanced level. And so
Mhm.
it quickly became apparent that, I was
Smart.
smart. And that became, kind of a calling card for me. I was honestly a little bit weird and awkward growing up. People would be really surprised now. I tell them this sometimes, that I'm actually, some ways an introvert at heart,
Mhm.
um, but I really was back then. I had a
Mhm.
very small circle of friends. Didn't really like interacting with the other kids. Had some different hobbies too. Like, when people would want to, back in preschool, people would want to do nap time. I'd be drawing maps instead. Or then a little bit later, I was into weather a whole lot. Actually,
Sure.
kind of a funny story. One year for Christmas, I asked for a Doppler radar. This was back, when that was a big deal, right?
Right.
I mean, TV stations would brag about their Doppler radars, and
Right. I
I
remember.
just think about it now, and it's like, at the time that was obviously an impossible request. Santa wasn't going to be able to do that one, but now it's like, well, we all have a Doppler radar in our pockets now on our
Right.
phone, so it's
Right.
just the basic kind of how
Right.
technology develops, right?
Yeah.
But that's I think I was 8 years old when I asked for that, so
Right. That's not a
so that was
typical
not a typical 8 year
8-year-old
old thing.
request. Yeah.
So I started taking kind of immense pride in my academic accomplishments. I wasn't the most popular kid.
Sure.
In fact, I was probably one of the kids that would get picked last for, like, if you're doing a draft for like a soccer team in PE or whatever,
Mhm.
because I really had no interest in that type of thing.
Mhm.
I tied my identity up into academic accomplishments
Okay.
and this idea that, like, well, even though if I'm not the most popular person, I'm the smartest.
Right.
And so that's how I'm going to justify myself.
That's,
Yeah.
yep, I gotcha.
Yep.
So you're a Easter and Christmas church
Yeah. Yeah.
family,
If
and
that, I mean, yeah,
if
we
that,
sometimes went on
okay.
those days, but it was honestly most of the time it was just in our own home.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
you've given me a really good idea of what you based your identity on
Yep.
and what was central in your life as
Yeah.
a little kid. Do you remember? Did you have a notion of God?
Um, I mean, I think when I was a really little kid, I would say yes
Hmm.
because my parents told me about him, and so I
Hmm.
was like, yeah, of course that's
Hmm.
true. And we were celebrating Christmas and Easter, and they were
Sure.
telling me the reasons for that, so I accepted that.
Hmm.
I think probably later into my, maybe around 10, 11, I
Hmm.
had maybe what I'd call a slight agnostic period where I figured like, okay, there's clearly something out there,
But
but
it's
I
not
don't
knowable.
know what it is, and it
Okay.
honestly it maybe doesn't matter all that much.
Okay. Yeah.
Towards later in high school, though,
Hmm.
I actually became, pretty convinced that at least the New Testament story was accurate, and I came to that conclusion intellectually because it just didn't make sense that a small Jewish, because I was also really into history as
History.
well.
Hmm.
It didn't make sense that a small Jewish sect
Hmm.
would be able to
Pivot the whole world.
spread the way that it did
Yeah.
and take over within about 300 years the entire theology of the Roman Empire and displace this really deeply entrenched theology.
Hmm.
So intellectually, I was like, okay, this probably actually happened.
Right. But it wasn't
But
personal.
it wasn't personal to me, and
Yeah.
it didn't change my life really in any meaningful way. I didn't start going to church at that point. I was like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, yeah, Christianity's probably, probably got something real going on here.
Hmm.
But this whole idea that you needed a personal relationship with Jesus, it just wasn't even a concept to me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the radar.
No, I didn't even, like I said, I didn't know what that meant. I mean, you would
Right.
hear people say that, and
Hmm.
I thought it just meant, they were really good at reading their Bible.
Some people still think that
Right.
that's what
I
it
think
means.
a lot
Yes.
do. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so around middle school, I really started taking an interest in politics.
Hmm.
So this was 2003 was
Hmm.
really a turning point for me. There was the recall election. People might remember, Arnold Schwarzenegger running for governor.
Hmm.
Um, and so the voters basically just decided to kick Gray Davis out of office and replace him with Arnold. And as a 13-year-old, I thought that was really cool, and it was like kind of this revolutionary idea that like, yeah, the people really do have the power here. So
Hmm.
I started getting into politics, and then went to high school, did speech and debate.
Hmm.
Um, Ended up being really good at it.
Hmm.
I made it to the national championship tournament for my final 3 years of high school. So
Well,
again, we talked already a little bit about this idea that I was kind of exceeding my peers in some key
right.
academic areas. So that, of
Sure.
course, only reinforced that notion. By the time I got to the end of high school, you know, I was, feeling pretty good about myself and
Right.
my prospects.
Right.
But I
Right.
didn't have a relationship with Jesus at that point.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so how did things change?
Well, so I ended up going to college at UC Berkeley, which is a school. My grandfather had gone there, as well as my uncle. I had gone to football games there since I was about 4 years old. So it was more or less my
Destiny.
my
Right.
I don't know if it was my destiny, because actually when I was really probably up until about my junior year of high school, I Berkeley wasn't actually that high up on the radar. It was really only when um, it started getting down to serious, like where are you going to go to school, and actually in California, that's the number one public university. So
Hmm.
it was kind of, it's like, okay, yeah, I'll definitely apply there, and then
Hmm.
went back and visited, and was like, yeah, this makes sense. But it wasn't the case that like, oh, I had been striving to go there ever since.
You weren't
It was just,
compelled
now
by
looking
the
backwards, it was
right.
like, oh
Okay.
yeah, okay, God was clearly setting up the the markers there for that to happen, because then when I got to Berkeley, I was like super comfortable almost immediately, because I had been around campus quite a bit growing up,
Hmm.
and actually got involved. And this is it really. it doesn't really play a big part of my faith story, but it's kind of interesting. I, joined the rally committee down there, and so I got to, shoot off the cannon at football games, and so I was kind of like fulfilling a lot of these like childhood dreams that I had had
Uh-huh.
for the first couple of years down
Right.
there, which was really fun.
Right.
I got to run out on the field with the flags and stuff like that. So
Oh, cool.
I was on TV a whole bunch during football games, and so
Yeah.
that was fun.
Yeah.
But really at college, it was a turning point for me. Berkeley is an awesome school. It's also super, super competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Even in terms of, I wasn't, most of the time people think about that in terms of like the STEM majors, science,
Mm-hmm.
computer science, engineering, things like that. Those are super competitive academically.
Mm-hmm.
But on the political side, Berkeley has, an incredibly robust like student government infrastructure and even their political clubs. So
Mm-hmm.
I got involved in the College Republicans,
Mm-hmm.
and there were about 600 members, I think, in the club, believe it or not,
Oh,
at
wow.
Berkeley, because
Yeah.
it was
The
kind of
interest
like
was there.
anyone, yeah, and
Yeah.
in a school of like 30,000 students, that was kind of, if you wanted to be involved in politics and you weren't, you know, a, that weren't super far left, you kind of gravitated towards the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
It was countercultural, really.
Mm-hmm. Because Berkeley
Right,
is stereotypically
absolutely.
very liberal.
Yeah, so
Yes.
the college Republicans, ironically, have always done very well there.
Mm-hmm.
But the competition for like leadership positions was just totally, I don't know how else to say it other than pretty cutthroat sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember some of the leadership elections there, and I ultimately ended up becoming the executive director of the group. But like some of the campaigns to be like president of the club and things, like I remember doing phone banks one time to like whip votes
Mm-hmm.
for this college group leadership position, and we would
Mm-hmm.
have because it was known that kind of people who were involved in the college Republicans often went on to do things later. You would have people from the state party who would get involved in these club issues.
Mm-hmm.
Even legislators.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't just
students.
It wasn't isolated to your
No,
school.
not at all.
It like actually affected
No, people
state
were
politics
a little bit. I mean,
yeah.
we had candidates coming to speak to us all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so right in the middle of my time at Berkeley was 2010, and this is back when California was still a competitive state,
Mm-hmm.
to at least some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But Meg Whitman was running for governor against Jerry Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And Meg Whitman came and visited with us. I don't know how many times, several times.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the background of a couple of her ads.
Mm-hmm.
She recruited us to do that. So it was,
Mm-hmm.
again, feeling the sense of pride a little bit, because I was
Right.
like, oh yeah, this candidate for governor
Mm-hmm.
wants to hang out with me and wants
Mm-hmm.
my support, and
Mm-hmm.
clearly is trying really, really hard
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
So, but that said, so by the time I kind of got to about my senior year, though, I realized, okay, up until this point, I've always kind of known what's next, right? When you're in school, it's like, okay, you get to the end of one school year,
Yeah.
know you're going to go to the next grade next year. Even when I was done with high school, it's like, okay, I know I'm going to go to college. Maybe don't know which college yet, but I know I'm going to go to college.
Right.
When you get to the end of college, it's like, okay, what now?
There's the whole world.
And I knew that I wanted to go into politics in some way,
Mm-hmm.
but still didn't know quite exactly what.
Mm-hmm.
And I also was starting to realize through those experiences just how brutal and ruthless it can be.
Yeah.
And so I realized, like, okay, I need something here to actually ground me.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, too, being on the Republican side of the aisle, obviously, I had a lot of friends who were born again Christians. They're typically a big part
Mm-hmm.
of the Republican coalition. So I was like, okay, it wouldn't hurt to at least go check this out. So
Mm-hmm.
a friend invited me to go check out a church service at one of the local churches. It was just a couple of blocks from campus.
Yeah.
And totally different than what I expected. Growing up, when we did go to church, it was often in a Catholic setting.
Yes. The
And
service
I
looks
have a lot of,
different. Yeah.
respect for the Catholic churches, but this was not that.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways it was kind of like a concert.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, really robust worship music. Um, you know, Obviously it was near a college campus, so a lot of fellow students were there.
Mm-hmm.
A very engaging mess. I don't recall exactly what the message was about, but it
Mm-hmm.
was a very engaging message. And then they had, I think, a dinner afterwards. So it was like
Mm-hmm.
just it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
honestly, up until this point, my perception of church, I kind of equated church with rules
Okay.
until this point. Like the friends I knew in like high school who went to church regularly, it seemed like they were subject to a lot of strict rules.
Okay.
So that was kind
From
of
their
my perception
from
from
their
their parents.
parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Mm-hmm.
think I interpreted it as, okay, you go to church and then they tell you what not to do.
Okay.
And
Yep.
it's kind of a fun suck, right? That was my
Mm-hmm.
impression of church
Sure.
growing up.
Sure.
The idea that you could actually go to church and it could be a fun place to build community
It's
rather than a
novel.
place where you go to just
Mm-hmm.
be admonished about what not to do
Mm-hmm.
was totally new to me. I went to that service. Shortly thereafter, that was when Laura and I started talking.
Mm-hmm.
That was also kind of a God thing because I don't think Laura would have continued talking to me if I wasn't going to church in some way, given her background.
Right.
So anyway, so that was really when I first started kind of opening the door a little bit more. But there was still a long ways to go there. I mean,
Yeah.
it was still this kind of academic faith. I was doing it kind of for my own reasons,
Right.
rather than wanting to develop a true relationship
Right.
with God.
Right.
So yeah, so then I graduate. I moved back to Sacramento. That first year after college was actually pretty rough. I think I had 6 different jobs in my first year
Mm-hmm.
out of college,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of a lot of temporary gigs and things.
Mm-hmm.
Then eventually landed at a public affairs firm here in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up having a really good experience there. But on the faith side, we went to so Laura and I had started dating, so we went
Right.
to a church in Sacramento for about a year, and it was one of the larger churches, and just
Mm-hmm.
I was really just a spectator at
Okay.
that point. I would go and listen to the message. It was kind of fun, but there
In
was
your
no
Mm-hmm. And
follow
in your
through.
dating, your conversations
Yeah.
with Laura, it wasn't.
I wouldn't say, and Laura may have more to say on this later. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say it was not prominent,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't the focus either.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like we didn't have super deep theological conversations.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, in some ways in that phase, I think my faith was a little bit kind of like checking a box.
Yeah.
A little bit later, we went to a church startup for a few years while we were still down in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
That church I actually did get a little bit deeper. We actually both started going to a small group there.
Uh-huh.
So that's when I first kind of got exposed to that aspect of it, kind of the smaller community side, rather than just being one person amongst like 1,000 people on a Sunday.
Okay.
It's like, here's what it means to actually develop friendships in a small group.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was still kind of a very surface level faith.
Do you remember the first time you prayed?
The first time I ever prayed?
Yeah.
Well, again, so
as an adult.
as an adult.
Ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we even growing up,
Mm-hmm.
during
Mm-hmm.
Christmas and Easter and other holidays, we would
say grace at the table.
I would often actually be the person
Okay.
saying grace during those times.
But did you
I would say
date it of your own initiative?
That's
yourself?
a good question, actually.
Yeah.
I think it was I definitely think it was when I was really little. I think it was like, yeah, this is just what we do.
Uh-huh.
Later, it was definitely
Mm-hmm.
genuine, but I don't know that I didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
It was like, okay, this is just what we do.
Okay.
We give thanks for the meal, and
Uh-huh.
God apparently hears us doing that and is
Uh-huh.
happy about that. But
Uh-huh.
I wasn't like, nowadays when I pray, I'm doing it with the expectation of a response, right? It's a
Yes.
conversation.
Yes.
Prayer is a conversation. It's
Yes.
not a one-way thing.
Yes.
Back then, it was definitely a one-way thing. It's like, I'm
Okay.
going to hoist these prayers up and
Okay. So
see what happens.
So I'm
Yeah.
just getting right
Yeah.
into it. I'm like,
Yeah.
when you made your decision
Yeah.
while dating Laura to go, no, you made a decision to go there before you were dating Laura.
Yeah.
In that decision process, were
Mhm.
you actively praying?
No.
Okay.
No.
And then once So I'm looking at what shift.
Yeah. So
Where
what
was a
shifted?
shift there? Yeah.
If I'm being completely honest about when I prayed on like a daily basis when I
Hmm.
started doing that didn't come until significantly later. That was
Okay.
after we were married.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of
Yeah,
trying to see
yeah,
like what was going on internally, going to
yeah. I
church
think I
and
definitely
all that.
felt good. Like I could
Yeah.
tell there was something there,
Yeah.
and I just didn't. Again, it was this idea that like when people say, "Oh, I have a relationship with Jesus," or "I pray a lot," it's like okay, they're spending time reading the Bible, which I was doing too. I would read
Sure.
the Bible, and
Sure.
it was
Sure.
nice.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't. So I think the biggest thing, and maybe the theme that one of the themes of my entire testimony is the transition from believing something in your head to actually
Yeah.
believing it in your heart.
Yeah.
And that took a really long time for me. I was
Yeah.
getting the head stuff. I was getting the knowledge. I was
Sure.
hearing the theology. I was hearing the
Right.
sermons.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really. It wasn't changing my life
Right.
because I wasn't making a big difference in my heart.
Right.
So yeah, it was a while after it was a while after that until it actually did.
Yeah.
Um,
And so the small groups.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so those were good because that was probably like the first kind of window into like how we actually do this in community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's
Mm-hmm.
where I did see people, examples of how people would pray and how they would pray for
Right.
one another.
Right.
You don't really get that in a big church service,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, the pastor says a prayer up there, but in a group of 500 people,
Right.
it just
It's
doesn't
different.
doesn't hit the same.
Yeah.
So that's really when people, I think that was probably also the first time that somebody actually prayed specifically for me and something I was going through. So,
Mm-hmm.
because during those small groups, we'd have a time for that. And so
Right.
that was definitely when kind of the door started being opened a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then, yeah, then Laura and I, also, I should add, I got baptized in 2013.
Uh-huh.
So before we got married.
Okay.
That was again, though. I mean, to be totally honest, looking
Yeah.
back now, I thought I was doing it for the right reasons, but
Right.
it's like now I look back, it's like okay, that was just something. It's like you're a Christian now, so this is what you do.
Right.
You profess your faith.
It wasn't that you were pretending or
No,
not
it
doing
wasn't
it
fake. It
genuinely. You
wasn't
just didn't
fake.
know what it all meant.
It wasn't fake, and I didn't have that context that I would learn later on. I kind of
Right.
just thought, okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to church now. I believe it.
Yep.
Let's
Yeah.
let's do the dunk.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I will say, looking back on it now, it's like it didn't. And people, talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Baptism is not this like magic wand that
Mm-hmm.
the pastor waves, and now you're a
Mm-hmm.
new person. And
Mm-hmm.
that was definitely the case for me. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
look back on it, like okay, did anything actually change
Mm-hmm.
really between before I was baptized and after I was baptized?
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think
So
these things are
yeah,
important.
yeah,
Like, yeah, because there is
yeah.
ideas about what
Right,
they all. Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so then Laura and I get married at the end of 2014,
Mm-hmm.
and so we start building our new life together initially in an apartment down in Rancho, and then
Mm-hmm.
as Laura mentioned, we decided to move on up here to
Mm-hmm.
El Dorado County, Shingle Springs. So that was fun, and that's really when I started. Well, God really started bringing people into my life that would kind of change my perspective on things
Mm-hmm.
when we moved up here and when we started going to the church that we're currently
Mm-hmm.
going to.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so that's when I met Chris Scott,
Mm-hmm.
who some of you may know is now the pastor to El Dorado County and is doing his own ministry there,
Mm-hmm.
reaching out to people in leadership positions. And so I really encourage people to go, Google his ministry and see
Mm-hmm.
how you can support him. But
Mm-hmm.
at this time, when I first met him, which was I think in 2016, we were going to church together, and then
Mm-hmm.
a year or two into that, he decided to start this thing called a Wild Sun's Fire
Mm-hmm.
in his driveway on an evening,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a monthly thing. I went because it sounded fun.
Wild Sun. So
Wild Suns, right?
this
I
is
didn't know what that
men's
meant. It's like
a men's
okay,
thing, not a
that's
small group
interesting
for both of you. It's a
No, it
men's
wasn't a
thing.
small group. It was definitely a men's thing, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm trying to think back now. I think that was the first time that I had gone to a men's specific group without Laura.
Okay.
We had been going back before we moved up to the hill, and then once we started going to our current church, we had been going to a marriage group.
Okay.
I don't think I had ever gone to a men's specific group until I started getting it before Chris
before
extended
Chris's
that invitation.
driveway. Yes.
Um, and I don't want to get too much into Chris's story a little bit, but if you do connect to him with him, which I hope you will, you'll learn that his background is also very interesting. He had been working in a very large company here as an engineer, and then he felt God calling him to just totally give that up and go to seminary. And that's an oversimplification of his story, but
Right.
that's what happened. That's about when I met
And
him.
and so that has an effect
Right.
on you when you hear
Oh,
that.
absolutely. So then I'm sitting
Yeah.
there at his driveway and hearing him
Mhm.
explain this, and it's
Mhm.
like, that's really weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Right. Right.
I honestly thought, I honestly thought when I first met, I thought, okay, he'll be in seminary, because this company had moved out of town to to a different state, and so I thought, okay, maybe this is just kind of an in between thing, and eventually he'll get another job as an engineer, and that'll be kind of the end of that. But no, I quickly realized through hearing him talking about it, it's like, okay, this guy is actually really, following the direction that the Lord has given him. And so there clearly must be a way that can happen. Um,
Seeing that demonstrated.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But it took a while though. I mean, so I think he started those fires in 2018. And initially they were kind of a hangout.
Yeah.
People would, and they still do, but it's, people bring snacks and beverages and, and just hang out around the fire. But I noticed that about Chris is that, first of all, he was making very interesting choices in his own life.
Right.
But also the way he was able to speak into the stories that other men would bring to the group.
Yeah.
So again, this wasn't a Bible study, so we didn't have like, a passage we were reading through or a book we were reading through or anything like that. It was really focused around, people would come and they'd say, hey, here's what's going on in my week, in my life. And then we just kind of talk about it with each other. And Chris was able to ask, the right questions at the right time with the right sensitivity, and actually leave them, the men would go away in a better place than when they came. And we had guys that were going, and still do, we have guys going through some really, really hard stuff.
Right.
And it just amazed me how Chris was able, clearly not through his own power,
right,
was able to facilitate an environment in which they could be open and honest and start to receive the healing that they needed to receive, and recognize that they weren't alone.
Right.
So one way that, he showed up for me specifically, just as just one example, I think was in 2020. So 2020 is when I turned 30 years old. And of course it was also when COVID started.
Yes.
So he had just started doing the fires in person again. Again, they were outdoors, so the risk at that point was fairly small. So in May of 2020, he had the first fire since COVID had started, and I was the only person that actually showed up.
Okay.
So we ended up having a conversation in his driveway, just me and him. And I was feeling kind of apprehensive because I was about to turn 30.
Right.
And again, I was still an incredibly professionally driven person. That was still my core identity.
Right.
And so there were all these things that it was like, I felt like I hadn't done yet, like that I still needed to do. And I was like, something happened when you go from 29 to 30. It's like, in your 20s, you're young. Everybody knows you're young. So you can kind of like just explore a little bit. And then psychologically, it seems like when you turn 30, you're supposed to just have it all figured out, right? So I was definitely feeling a little apprehensive about that. And so when I was talking to Chris, one thing he told me just stuck really clear. It's just like, no, Andy, you're right on time. You're doing, what God, has for you, and you don't need to worry about like, constantly trying to stay ahead and things like that. So, and that was just exactly what I needed to hear at that moment.
Yeah.
I was kind of the start of it. There was a lot more to come though.
Right.
So in the meantime, professionally, I was still doing really well. I actually switched from private sector over to the state in 2016, actually right before we moved up here. But I was doing really well in that position too. When we moved up to El Dorado County, I really started getting involved in the local political scene, started going to the Taxpayers Association here. And within about a year, they had asked me to be their vice president. And it actually wasn't even something I was looking to do. I did intend to run for the board of directors, but then I got elected to that, and they were like, hey, somebody nominated me to be vice president. And so I did, and I was 28 years old at that point. So, and the Taxpayer Association has a lot of members in it who have been involved in local government for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
There were some supervisors in the group. There were some other prominent county officials in the group, and so I was super honored, obviously, but that also, of course, really got to my head.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, and then a year after that, they elected me as their president.
Uh-huh.
So at 29 years old, I was the president of the Taxpayers Association in this county. And so I was doing super well in terms of my career and my community life. And this is about when I first started getting the idea, to potentially look at, running for office myself. And started making plans that way. And it almost started to kind of feel inevitable at that point, because it was like, okay, well, I'm clearly advancing super quickly here. So yeah, so then that kept continuing, into 2020. In 2021, I was asked to join the County Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is a group that's advisory to the Board of Supervisors, but they have the authority to make decisions on a lot of land use related permits, things like conditional use permits, subdivision maps, things like that.
Zoning or
zoning, absolutely.
Okay, I'm
That's a big
just
part
trying
of
to
it.
relate it to what I know.
Yep.
Okay.
And they also make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on things like our general plan and
Mhm.
really how El Dorado County is going to develop. So it was a super, it's a super controversial position. It's also a super, frankly, it can be a super powerful position in terms of how the future of our county develops. So about a year and a half after joining the Planning Commission, I was elected as the chair. And so this was early 2023. And so we moved to El Dorado County in 2016. So at about 7 years, I had gone from not even living here to holding one of the most powerful positions in the county. It was definitely looking for more at that point too. I positioned myself externally. I presented myself as being, the humble servant, of course, but internally,
Woohoo, let's go.
politics is a heck of a drug.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, if you look, across the political landscape, we have people in their 80s still running for office. And I think it's because once you kind of have that, and once you're kind of recognized in the community, it becomes part of your core identity. It's not that there's ulterior motives there. Like, I was still very, very motivated to do the best I could for the community.
Right.
But internally, it was definitely starting to become what I actually formed my identity around.
Right.
And what
This
I
is
spent
who
most
I
of my
am.
talking about, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of not doing that was just
Who am I?
crazy. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So then around 2024, the disruption starts. That's what I call it, is the disruption. So it actually goes back to Chris. So so what Wild Suns actually is, I mentioned earlier, his fire is called the Wild Suns Fire. Wild Suns is a nonprofit organization. They're based out in Colorado, and among other things, they do these retreats for men, where you can go out and essentially the theme of these retreats is reclaiming your true identity.
Okay.
And so Chris had invited me actually a couple of times even before to go to this event out there, and on the third time I finally said yes. This was the spring of 2024.
Okay.
So Chris and I went out to Colorado, and went up to this place called Trail West Lodge. It's in the Rockies.
How many days is the retreat?
So it was a 4-day experience, 3 nights, 4 days. And the thing about it is they really want you to lock in. So you have to surrender your electronic devices, which was really crazy for me. What's crazy for me is actually how willing I was to do it, because up until this point, I just been completely addicted to technology, as I think a lot of us are. But I was actually okay with that, which is weird looking back. So anyways, I didn't have my cell phone, completely disconnected from the rest of the world. And we really just spend time, there's some really powerful teaching, but there's also a lot of time where you just spend time in solitude. There's these small groups that you form called fire teams, where you really just listen to each other's stories and kind of try to speak into that. And what I don't want to go into all the details because part of it is the experience, and I know there's probably other guys listening to this who maybe go to that event at some point because they're still doing it. But one of the things that I came away from that event with was that Jesus is real and that you can actually have a personal relationship with him. You can pray and get some sort of guidance and feedback back. It's not necessarily that he, audibly speaks back to you, but you can get, you can have a relationship with him. And that was really the first time I had experienced that robustly there. It was also where I kind of got called out because, again, in these small fire team groups, you kind of share what's going on in your life. And, it became quickly apparent to the other guys in the group that like my identity was being placed in my accomplishments. I mean, I even looking back on it, it's pretty clear when I was going in, I was basically campaigning to them because that's kind of all I knew how to do at that point.
To relate to people.
Yeah. It was kind of selling
Did
myself.
you campaign? Did you do that to Jesus at all?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually,
I don't know.
That's
Sorry,
a very good question.
Take you off.
No.
Yeah.
I think I probably did. But I don't remember a specific example. But that's just kind of what. At that point, I was pretty much a politician. That's kind of how I operated.
Right.
So, but they kind of called me out on it. Sure. Basically, it's like, well, everything's coming from your head. Right. It doesn't seem like it's coming from your heart.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized, like, okay, I've got to, in order to actually have a relationship with God, it's got to go from being just a head thing, an intellectual thing, to an actual thing that you believe in your heart. And that's also where I learned that it's good to have passions and hobbies and things that aren't necessarily just directly connected to accomplishments or
to your goals.
Right. It's good to read a book that's not a self-help book, or it's okay to one big thing with Laura is playing video games. It's okay to play video games, things like that.
Right.
Play basketball, whatever.
Right.
Because up to this point I was very driven, so I just didn't really have a whole lot of other like hobbies.
Right.
So that event was just a really transformative experience for me. And then, and so then I come back from that. That was April of 2024. Definitely had a different perspective. It was still the case though that like I was convinced that God was like setting me up for great things, and so I was now living out of a new identity as a son of God.
Okay.
But I also believed that he was setting me up to run for supervisor and have this political career.
Okay.
So I definitely, it changed my attitude, but it didn't necessarily change the direction I was headed immediately.
Okay.
But then towards the end of 2024, some things started happening. First of all, the Planning Commission started getting a little bit more contentious for a variety of reasons that probably aren't necessary to go into, but there started being some really tough decisions that we had to make, and I feel good about the decisions that I made.
Right.
But some of them, to be honest, weren't super popular.
Yeah.
And so, but it was actually that was starting to cause anxiety because I was worried about, running for supervisor in 2026. And I was like, well,
this isn't making me popular.
No.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, how do I rectify this?
Yeah.
And then I also started experiencing more demands, which was a good thing because they trusted me and they needed me to step up. But I started getting called on to do more things at my actual day job because you have to remember, none of this was actually my day job. Being a planning commissioner is, believe it or not, actually a side gig.
It's a volunteer?
Almost volunteer. You get a stipend. But,
okay.
But I was actually it's an appointed. The board of supervisors appoints. Each supervisor gets to appoint somebody.
So you're doing this in your evenings and
weekends. It's a hobby essentially. It's not really a hobby, but it's a service. It's an extra job. It's a second job.
Okay.
I was actually taking leave time from my day job to go do these things.
Okay.
Yeah, but then towards the end of 2024, again, things start getting busier at my main job, and it's like I don't have as much time as I thought I was going to have.
Right.
and I'm realizing, okay, this is not actually sustainable.
Right.
And so, um, but on the other hand, the idea of not doing it is
You're
just completely foreign and alienating to my own sense of self.
you still had your identity wrapped around.
Exactly. Wrapped up in what I'm doing
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and not who I am.
Mm-hmm. Even though it was called out,
Even though it was called out in
it
Colorado,
just hasn't
it just
been.
morphed.
Yeah.
It morphed into, okay, you know, I'm really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm doing all these things.
Mm-hmm.
After Colorado, it was, okay, God set me up to do these really awesome things.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. No.
Right?
This is what happens with us. So yeah.
It was still a pride issue, just a
Mm-hmm.
slightly different pride issue.
Right.
But anyway, so long story short, we get towards the end of 2024,
Mm-hmm.
and things just aren't working right. Like, I'm starting to get super stressed. Laura's definitely noticing it. Other people in my life are definitely starting to notice it.
Mm-hmm.
We get towards the holidays, and I just kind of decide to take a break for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thinking that, okay, after the holidays we'll regroup and things will be better. We actually ended up going on a really great. That was our 10-year wedding anniversary. We got married right before Christmas, so right before Christmas of 2024 was our 10-year wedding anniversary. We went on a vacation down to Southern California. Actually, it was a really fantastic vacation, and I think one of the reasons it was super fantastic was that we actually didn't plan it out in advance, other than like where we were going to stay.
Yeah.
We just kind of were spontaneous and let God kind of guide us into what we were going to do each day, and ended up having some incredible experiences. One thing we didn't plan to do this, but we saw a billboard for it. But the Reagan Library actually had the Dead Sea Scrolls there on display, and so we went and did that and got to see little elements of the Western Wall and other Jewish coins and things that were around at the time, which Jesus was walking Israel. So that was super cool, and something that I never would have planned out to do.
Right.
But we were just spontaneous. And so anyway, so that ended up being a super great trip. But then after Christmas, of course, nothing actually changed. Like, I was going right back into the same environment that I left.
Right.
Still super stressed. Still super anxious. And if anything, the demands were even increasing. And so right after New Year's, in fact, it was literally right after New Year's, I actually had the paperwork ready to go. I still have it, actually, to run for supervisor in 2026. But I just physically could not do it. Like, my head wanted to do it. But there was something just holding me back. Like, I could not. I planned to file on January 2nd, which was the first day you could file in 2025. I just couldn't get out the door to do it. And so I was like, okay, something's wrong here. We're pressing pause.
Right.
Long story short, I start praying about it. I start realizing, I went to God, it took a couple of weeks, but I started hearing from God. It's like, no, this isn't actually what I have for you.
Yeah.
And even being on the planning commission right now isn't necessarily what I have for you.
Yeah.
So that was really, really hard to hear. It took probably about 2 months for me to actually accept that.
Right.
In the meantime, I was just in total breakdown mode. It was like, having a hard time getting up in the morning.
Right.
Totally stressed out, was starting to impact my health. And it was all because I just could not imagine a scenario in which I wasn't in public life. It just wasn't. It becomes so ingrained in my identity. That's just who I was. But I had some really great people who came alongside. Obviously, Laura was wonderful throughout that entire experience. Chris was also great. I talked to him at least weekly during that period, and he walked me through it and would pray with me and would help me to hear from God and hear what God had for me, and help me realize that, no, Andy, your identity is as a beloved son. Your identity is not as a planning commissioner or
not
as a
what you can do
or
for.
It's not about what you can do for God. It's about who you are.
Yeah.
And then when you start to live out of that identity, then things start opening up. But fundamentally, no matter what else happens externally, you're a child of God, and that's at your root. Everything else is kind of just bonus.
Right.
So it took me like
Overflow.
3 months to realize
Right?
that.
Right?
So this was like the first third of 2025.
Mhm.
Um, I also, in this time, I started going to therapy for the first time ever.
Mhm.
Um, and funny story, how God always lines things up. But a guy that we carpooled from the Denver airport up to that retreat in Colorado back in
Yes.
2024 was a therapist. So I went and saw him for therapy, and
Uh-huh.
that was great because he spoke the same language.
Yeah.
He spoke this language about identity and
Right.
developing a relationship with Jesus. And of course, he was a very strong believer. So it's
Right.
just interesting because had I not gone to that retreat a year before, I probably would have gone to some,
Other
and there's
therapists.
great therapists, don't get
Yes.
me wrong, but it wouldn't have been the same. It wouldn't have
Right.
been somebody I already had a personal connection with
Right.
and that was chasing after the same things that I was. So that was super helpful. He
Mhm.
helped me walk through kind of the rough, you know, thought patterns that I had, and
Mhm.
it's a type of therapy called internal family systems therapy, which focuses on parts
Mhm.
and this idea
Mhm.
that there's parts of us that interact and can become polarized, and then that's what can cause anxiety. And so he helped me to identify some of those, and even reaching back into childhood and
Mhm.
realizing, some of these experiences where I started to become, kind of exiled from the rest of the kids,
Mhm.
but started putting faith in my own intelligence.
Right.
That had to be addressed.
Right.
So we
Right.
worked through a lot of that.
Right.
Um, and then by about April, I started feeling better. At that point, I got up the gumption to actually resign from the planning commission and
Mhm.
told key people that I, wasn't going to run for supervisor, at least not in 2026.
Mhm.
And it also helped things started getting less stressful at my job too.
Mhm.
But I just really felt, a renewed sense of who I was and started to be able to act from a more free place,
Mhm.
be able to do things because um, they were opportunities that God was putting in front of me,
Mhm.
not because they were things I felt like I had to do.
Mhm.
And so for the last year, that was a little over a year ago now, and I've
Mhm.
just been it's been amazing to see even in that time kind of what new doors God had opened that I never would have even thought of. I
Mhm.
actually ended up so in May, an old mentor actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody for this position,"
Mhm.
and I was like, "Huh, that actually sounds interesting. I might want to do that." And so
Yeah.
I ended up applying for that job and ended
Yeah.
up getting a new job in October. That's something that I think is frankly using my skills in
Right.
a different way. That's really that I really enjoy.
Good.
That never would have happened if I was running for supervisor. I would not have been able to do that.
Right.
Um, I've started. So I mentioned the fire groups.
Yes.
So we still have those fires happening at Chris's house, but now I felt called, and a few of the other guys in the group as well felt that we should start another fire down in the Sacramento area
Mhm.
to try to reach guys in the
Mhm.
broader community that, in the broader metropolitan area. So
Mhm.
I worked with, a few of the other guys to start up a fire that we started this year in Elk Grove.
Nice.
Um, and so that's also something that probably wouldn't have happened
Right.
had I not gone through all this experience. And so it's just been, I wouldn't say that like, I still get stressed out every once in a while, but
Sure.
it's just living from a new identity
Mhm.
has been really, really fun.
Mhm.
And it's just, blown away this idea, like I said earlier, my impression of church had always been like this is about rules and about telling you what not to do. And
Mhm.
what I've learned is that when you develop a true relationship with Jesus, it's incredibly freeing,
Mhm.
and it's all about what you can do in partnership with him.
Mm.
And that's really, really cool. And he'll
Mhm.
open the door for you to do things that you never thought you would have been able to do, that are
Mhm.
way cooler than whatever dreams you had, and that ultimately are super, super fulfilling, not just for you, but the people around you in your path. So yeah. So all that said, my testimony, I feel like it's all about the idea that accepting Jesus is really something you have to do through your heart and through a
Mhm.
personal relationship with him. It's not head knowledge.
Right.
And it's also not necessarily about church.
Right.
One of the things I love about Jesus Fest
Mhm.
is that Jesus Fest is an event where we just come together and we have a big party about Jesus. That's
Mhm.
what it is.
Celebrate.
There's no rules at Jesus Fest. I'm just kidding. There are some rules, but it's not you're not being preached at all day. There are some messages, but it's all about just celebrating who Jesus is and having fun with other people in El Dorado County. And I feel like that's what the Christian walk is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about supporting each other in community and pointing others to the truth of who Jesus is. And I've been super grateful to be able to experience that, and just hope that others will as well, and that even people who are currently going to church, like I said, I think there's a lot of people who currently go to church who don't really experience all that God has for them quite yet.
Right.
And so
I don't think I experienced
all
all that God
well, that's
has
true. I don't
for us.
either. Actually, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, no.
It's not like I'm like perfect at all.
No.
I mean,
but that movement from the head to the heart,
Yep.
and knowing who He has made you to be,
right,
and operating from that rather than, hey.
Right. It's honestly, it's a flip, right?
Yeah.
So it's a flip in your attitude from I have to earn God's love to God already loves me. So what can I do in partnership with Him? So that's the mind shift. It's not something you don't have to earn it.
Right.
All you have to do is say yes and invite Him in.
Right. That's
good. It. There's nothing special.
Yeah. Yeah. It's His life in us, and that it makes a difference in who we are.
Right.
And yeah.
Right.
It's lovely.
Right.
Before I invite Laura back over to talk to you guys together, I just want to ask if this message were to get to someone who operates out of their head.
Yep.
Who just sees I can't think of the word.
Well, they just see a path for their life, and they won't deviate from it. That's where I was.
Yeah. You know what made the difference for you, but what message would you have for them?
I think it's incredibly important to get into a community with other believers. As I've said, the shift for me didn't come through my own power. And I think Jesus absolutely can do this on an individual basis, but the way He did it for me is through other people in my life, Chris and Laura and many others who just saw an opening and extended an invitation. And you have to get those people in your life. And the great thing is there are opportunities out there. If you God will bring those opportunities into your life to develop those communities. I just think it's so important that you don't try to do this on your own. Because it would have been impossible for me. I mean, it sounds, and I probably just made it sound way too easy to just be like, oh yeah, all you have to do is accept Jesus into your heart and start living out of that identity. If somebody had said that to me 5 years ago, I'd have been like, okay, how do I do that?
Right. Right.
and it's not, and there's no simple, it's honestly through learning how to hear the voice of God and then being able to trust in that. And you really need a supportive, mentor to walk you through that. One ministry, like I said, I've been really blessed by is Wild at Heart. They have these fires that happen regularly. If you're, obviously for men, we have a couple of fires now here in the Sacramento area. I believe there's at least one for women as well, although we really need to work on that. But either way, whether it's through your church or just through life, just seeking those relationships with people who are also chasing after the same thing, I think is the biggest thing, because there is no individual like self-help book that's going to fix this.
Right.
Yeah.
Other people can help be mirrors.
Yep.
So that you're looking in actuality.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and they can call you out the bad thinking that you have.
Well,
or
and
negative
also
thinking,
you get to see someone else's relationship with Christ and go, it could mean that.
Absolutely.
He does that for you, or you bring this to Him. So awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. All right, let's bring Laura over.
I think
Hi, friends. Before we continue, you may want to pause this episode and go back and listen to Laura's testimony. Their interview together is also included at the end of her episode. If you keep listening right now, you'll hear Laura and Andy together. Thanks.
So when we left off with you, you talked about being married and we kind of left it at that and then let Andy tell his story. And I just wondered if there was anything you wanted to talk about with how you saw Jesus in your married life, even with some of these things that your husband was going through. What did that look like from your perspective?
Yeah. So as I had kind of said at the end of mine, I kind of, my enemy was then routine. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't really, are you a bobblehead?
No, maybe.
You might be. It's okay. You're a cute bobblehead. But routine was kind of my new enemy to fight against. And so I was not, like, we went to church, mm-hmm. but I wasn't, at least I don't think I was really doing anything in particular to kind of pull myself or Andy or like us together really closer to Jesus. It was mm-hmm. kind of like, okay, I believe in God. I believe I am a sinner. I believe that he rose to save me from my sins, mm-hmm. and all of us. And like, we're going to church, we're tithing, like mm-hmm. we're checking the boxes. Mm-hmm. So we're good. Mm. And I didn't ever really like push it past that. And so I am very grateful that Chris never stops pushing. And so honestly, his trip to that conference was kind of life-changing for us both because it was very directly impactful on Andy, obviously. But for me to witness the change in him mm-hmm. Was also really powerful because, like, as he shared, like, things were getting kind of stressful a bit before it mm-hmm. with work and things. And, you know, as he mentioned, he was really tied to his phone and he was just really kind of, it sounds like a bad thing to say about your husband, but he was just like very uptight. He was very like closed off, like did not, you know, just wanted to, like, at family gatherings, mm-hmm. which should be like, you know, where you relax and let loose and enjoy time with your loved ones. Like, he wouldn't even hardly play cornhole out of the fear of being bad at it.
Okay. He's in his head.
He was very much in his head. Yeah. And suddenly, when he comes back from Colorado, suddenly, like, his heart is on his sleeve, and I'm like, who is this? It was just a really powerful thing to see mm-hmm. because he was just so stressed and concerned and trying to do everything under his own power before, and very concerned with how he looked to others and what others thought of him and like what contribution he was making at any given moment of the day, night and day. Yeah. And just to see him come back and like be so loose mm-hmm. and like suddenly he's plugging his phone in like 10 feet away from the bed mm-hmm. At night mm-hmm. and you know, he was I think he was advised, and it was very wise advice, but he got back, you know, in the wee weird hours of the night, and I wanted to hear how it was, and he wouldn't tell me anything. He said, just wait for tomorrow morning and we'll have breakfast together and then mm-hmm. I'll tell you all about it. Mm-hmm. And then we had like a 3-hour breakfast mm-hmm. of me hearing everything that like it was just really powerful.
Mhm.
And just getting to see him become the spiritual leader of us, in a way that before he was more concerned about like career and that kind of contribution, and
Yes.
then after it was way more like, what are we doing for Jesus?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I better like buckle up over here. um but it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I'm trying not to cry again.
That's wonderful. So, what does life with Jesus look like now together?
Right. Well, I think for me it involves, and for both of us, it involves a lot more intentionality and
Prayer.
actually prayer and taking time to consider the cost of certain activities before we do them. So, for example, if there's another, men's event coming up and it's like, oh, I really want to go do that, but that would take away from, the time that we have together, maybe, or take away from this time, even the time we have for sleep. That's
Yep.
that's something that we want to take into account and bring to God to kind of get a direction on that. And so I think we've both started to do that more. We a lot more now have a strong habit of praying before bed every night.
Together.
Together, yes.
That's awesome.
And we both do. I would say we both do daily quiet time, although I think Laura's better at it than I am. I do miss occasionally, but we both journal, and we just have deeper conversations. I think
with each other and with God, and just kind of seek His guidance on things, more things than we used to. I mean, I don't know if we're by no means perfect, but I mean, it made us a lot more open to radical answers from God. And one of the ways that kind of manifested was, is it okay if I tell this story? Obviously, I won't say his name. A certain teenager.
I can tell it indirectly, yeah.
I can always take it off or edit it.
Yeah, you can tell it indirectly.
I'm not going to share like any intimate details, but basically, we heard. I feel like this is where God has a sense of humor, and I still scroll social media. Who doesn't? And on social media, someone from church said, I have this teenager and he needs a place to live until he turns 18. And I kind of elbowed Andy and I was like, well, we have a spare bedroom. What should we do? And then it kind of started like, it worked its way into like all of our conversations, kind of, in a way. Like it was constantly at the back of our minds. And so we took a couple of hours. We set aside a couple of hours and we turned off all the screens, all the devices, all that, and we separated because we were like, we don't want to influence each other. We both just want to hear from God. So we separated ourselves and we pretty much just took like our Bibles and a pencil and paper, and our question was like, God, are you asking us to say yes to this?
Yeah.
Because it feels insane.
Yeah.
And we both heard yes, like resounding, like it could not have been more clear if there were neon signs and like gongs. And so we were, before Colorado, like it never would have even gotten that far.
Right.
We would have just been like, this is insane. There's no way we can take care of a teenager.
Right.
Like, no, obviously. But God's answer was yes. And it was kind of a whirlwind. I think it was about 2 weeks from when I saw that post on Facebook to
Yeah.
him moving into our house.
Mhm.
And he was able to stay with us for
About 8 months,
like
I think.
8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it, it was just crazy. Like, 3 months before that, it would have been like a no-brainer, no.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we both just really opened ourselves up more to God. What do you want us to do?
Yes.
And so, I think that's a really big example
Yeah.
of like how far open
Right.
God pried him open,
Yeah.
and then
Mm.
I was, felt really led to follow in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're seeking him together,
Yep.
which includes seeking him apart and then coming back together and,
comparing
yeah.
notes, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
So that was just a really big and powerful example. There's not been anything so big since that.
Mm-hmm. That's
On
that
that
is
scale.
Yeah, no, that is
Taking a teenager frame.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and even just your yes is just and
Right.
your yes is powerful, and then his grace to sustain you through that decision and through living that out is wonderful. Yeah.
So
how do you see Andy playing from his heart? Do you see
he's definitely more relaxed.
Mhm.
Like family gatherings is where I see it the most. Like there was one that was fairly soon after. I have a lot of nieces and nephews, so it was a niece, or no, it was a nephew nearby ish, about an hour away, and we were at, I think it was his birthday. I don't know exactly what event.
I think it was
I don't remember.
It doesn't matter. It was somebody's birthday.
It was
Mhm.
someone's
Big birthday.
birthday. It's always someone's birthday.
Mhm.
And later in the party, some of the kids went out and were riding all the wheeled devices around on the patio. And I was chatting with my sisters and my mom and whatnot, and suddenly I'm like, wait, where's Andy? And he's out there riding in circles with the little kids on a scooter. And like past Andy, like that would have been way too unprofessional.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Are
you purposefully choosing things to be playful and to operate from your heart?
Yes and no, honestly. I mean,
Okay.
I think you used the word purposefully. I mean, it's not something that I'm necessarily deciding to do. It's just something that I'm doing. And maybe the best way to describe it is, like Laura said, there would have been some barrier there in the past. Like something would have, just the stop sign would have gone up in my head. It's like, oh no, that we're not going to do that. Maybe it sounds fun to do. We're not going to do that. And now that stop sign is just not there anymore. So it's not so much I'm like intentionally deciding to go, ride around.
There's just self-forgetfulness.
Like, I'm just allowing myself to do it more.
Yeah.
And I still think I have quite a ways to go on that. Actually, I could probably use some more hobbies that are not work.
I keep trying to get him into gaming. It's not working.
Oh, it might be something else.
Yeah.
That's playful. So yeah. So I just want to offer an opportunity. Is there anything either one of you want to say more about who Jesus is to you?
I just say he's a constant companion and a friend and a trustworthy leader.
Yeah.
I think for me, just he's personal.
Yeah.
Which obviously he's been trying to show me my whole entire life by how all of my disability logistics have been working out. But sometimes he just really drives it home extra that, like, he loves me.
Yeah.
And he forgives me.
Mhm.
And, you know, there's so much that can come out of that, and so
Yeah.
much that does come out of that.
Mhm.
And I think to add on to that, he's there whether you know it or not.
Mhm.
Back over my entire 35 years of living and
Mhm.
see his fingerprints on everything,
Mhm.
even if that's not, I had no knowledge of it at the
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
but it's never too late to lean into that. And he's always extending the invitation. And so there's no better time than now to say yes.
I like that. Well, thank you for saying yes to telling your story.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I appreciate it. All right.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you,
Thank
Janelle.
you.